Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally, and you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Finally Clicked with Jesse D. Moore and Margaret M. Smith. We're here today with a very special guest, Vanessa Rosenblum with Pro R.E.A. Staffing, and I'm excited to introduce you guys to her and for you to learn a little bit more about her experience in the real estate industry and beyond, and hear about what she does with Pro R.E.A. Staffing.
Woo! Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah. Just a little color.
Just a little bit. We may or may not be having a sip of some scotch while we do this
Which
episode.
is a bold move. I mean,
It's bold stepping away from whiskey.
it might be a mistake.
It's very
We'll
well
find
could
out
be.
soon, right?
Yeah. So I just want to have Vanessa kind of start off and tell us a little bit about you. Would you like
I
to
want to
drive
start
that?
with the places you've been.
Oh,
Because I think it's
a little
pretty
Dr.
fascinating.
Seuss, eh?
So I don't want you to get into I don't even want you to get past the first level. But just do it
Boom, boom, boom.
boom, 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 boom.
All right, let's see. So born in Florida, raised in Iowa, 10 years in LA. Italy, Costa Rica, Sonoma, California, 2.5. Hawaiian Islands, Boston, Orlando, Portugal, southern Spain, and now Girona, Spain. Whew, in a decade.
And those are all places she's lived, not
Just
visited.
visited,
You had permanent residence. In
That was
those
the
places.
intention. So I guess that's a traveler's question. So how long do you have to live in a place before you get to say you actually lived there?
Good question.
Yeah, so it is a good question. So, Portugal was 4 months, but we rented an apartment. So does that count if there was
Sure.
intention behind it? I don't know.
4 months anywhere that's not a vacation.
No.
Most people can't take a 4-month vacation.
I feel like anything beyond a month where you're really having to start to settle in, find your local grocery store, rent a place. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had this problem where we'd really want to visit a place, and instead of just going on vacation, we would find a job and move there. So I think we've hopefully gotten that out of our system at this point.
Yeah,
But that's how it rolled.
you're like the Instagram wanderlust career path before the Instagram wanderlust career path existed.
It was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun. I don't regret it at all. It's exhausting.
I can't imagine moving.
Picking up that option.
moving is one of my most hated activities
This is
of
true.
all time.
Yeah.
And then to move out of the country.
Yeah.
Have you just bought a lot of stuff and go, you know what? I'm not
I have to
taking it
leave
with
that
me.
behind.
Yeah. So I think my family is done buying me things, like the vacuum cleaner, or the blender, like the stuff, especially when you're moving countries and you
yeah.
can't bring the blender with you because, the sockets are different. So yeah, we don't get gifts anymore, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It was a fun adventure. We would get itchy, in a place for a little bit, kind of figure it out, and then nothing was tying us down. So we're like, what's next?
No, I think it's commendable. I love traveling, and traveling just gives you a taste of any country, right? I'm the type of traveler that I seek out the locals. I want to go to where the locals hang out, and I want to sit there and listen to them as they enjoy their happy hour and they talk about their lives and argue about sport teams and everything else. So I think it's awesome. I could easily have done it in a different life. In my next life, I'll do it.
In your next life, yeah.
Although it's a lot of moving. I'd have to really get used to moving.
Well, I think cutting the cord was the hardest part. So I had lived in my house in LA for about 7 years. And so making the decision to leave, we decided to leave and left in 3 months. So got the visas, sold everything, bought the
Wow.
one-way plane tickets, the whole thing happened, and got married, by the way. We'd been engaged, but we had to get married. My husband's Italian, so we had to get married so that I could get the visa. And I had a whole house full of stuff, right? So that garage sale and that process was hard. But once you've done it once, you realize you can, and you've kind of cut that cord, that disconnect from your stuff, and it's a lot easier. But after, and at least for us, I missed having stuff. I'm very happy to have my stuff again, and we have a big house, and it's amazing. You will have as much stuff as you have space to put it, unfortunately. So it was great for that time period, but I'm kind of happy to have roots again.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that in order to do this, you had to find a way to make money, right? Where you could move anywhere. So, I mean, that's the biggest hurdle most people would find is, how do I have gainful employment in Portugal or Costa Rica or...
Well, and the timing was really perfect for that, because I had a recruiting firm in Los Angeles, brick and mortar. People came into my office and met with me. And then Skype became a thing, and people had phones with cameras on them. And I realized I can interview people remotely, and that changed everything, because I could interview people outside of Los Angeles. I could stack my schedule. People weren't trying to get off at lunch to come meet with me, and it meant I could be anywhere. And so that, really the timing lined up with my needs, and that was it.
So we probably should tell them what you do.
Oh, yeah.
Not just all the places you
Maybe.
I'm a recruiter. I help real estate teams hire administrative staff, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now.
And it's not passive income because you're very much involved in it.
Very much involved, yeah.
But it is, it allows you to work remotely anywhere in the world that you have an internet connection, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Asia would be hard with the time zones, but Europe is great. So I work from about 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., which some people would hate, but I love having my mornings free.
I like
and I get to live a day and then go to work. So I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I have a team of recruiters and an executive assistant, and they're all, for the most part, based in the U.S. I have one digital nomad who pops all over the place. But that's what I love. Like I've attracted people who want to have a really meaningful career, and they want to be able to live and work on their terms. And so I'm really, really proud of the fact that these people get to do that with me. And, sometimes if you're a digital nomad and you want to travel and work, you end up doing, kind of crap work, right? So you're doing data entry or translation or something. But we're able to give people real deal.
No, I think that's one of the really cool
love.
things that I noticed right off the bat was I follow a lot of digital nomads on Instagram. And when I met Sarah Weaver, who's the one that's hopped all over the place, I was like, what an amazing life. And at 29, to be able to have been to all the places that she's been to in such a short period of time, what a cool job. Like, it's been a
oddly,
highlight.
Margaret's dressed like a digital nomad
my gosh.
today.
I knew he was going to bring up my poncho.
I love it.
Thank you, Vanessa.
How much I adore
I'm wearing
it.
a fall poncho for those of you that are not in the room with us. And it's red, white, and blue, and some fall colors. And
If
Jesse
you run across a wild Mustang, you can totally throw that on it as a saddle blanket and
my gosh.
ride off into the
Yes,
sunset.
maybe I am a digital nomad. I am. Yeah, in my heart of hearts.
In your style, certainly.
For sure.
Well, I've inspired a few, so watch out, Jesse. I might just convert her.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just such a novel idea and concept. I'm jealous. I want to pick up and move and work remotely from an exotic location.
Well, let me tell you, the next frontier, when they finally figure out how to get internet on boats in the middle of the ocean and it doesn't cost a fortune, watch out. I'm on a catamaran sailing around the world. Seriously. My husband's like, no, Vanessa, please stop. You're killing me. But that's, the only thing holding me back, honestly, is I need internet. I can't be without internet in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be there before long.
I know.
Right?
I told my husband, like, watch out. It's coming.
Meanwhile, you're signing up for boating lessons.
Yeah. That's the next frontier for me.
We were kind of getting to know each other and couldn't help but talk about some of the hurdles that come with running a staffing company. So maybe we should talk about
Dig into that a little
some
bit.
of the commonalities we've run into, not only in recruits, but in agents. And maybe what are some of the common obstacles you run into placing talented people in work?
Oh man, where do we start? So I think the reason I was attracted to working with real estate agents is because it's like a microcosm for business at large, because you guys all do the same thing, but your personality and your natural skills and talents greatly impact what it's like to work in that little business. And I find that really fascinating. And so, I mean, the challenges really come from a personal development standpoint a lot of the time. So we have some clients, some agents who either had management experience before, or they're, you know, really natural leaders and teachers. And so some of this process is a lot easier for them. They're just busy and they need help finding people and getting them through the process. And other people haven't quite figured out who they are, what they value, you know, why anyone would want to come and work for them. And it's a lot harder to find somebody and convince them to like leave their job and come work for this other person when that person can't tell you why that's such a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And so some of it is really like personal development work, like really understanding what you're offering and creating an environment that a talented, motivated individual would want to work in. Because when we can start with that, then it's a lot easier to find those people.
Yeah, so I can see how you would have control over the self-development of a recruit. And do you have any control over the development of a client?
Not really. We try. So we try to spend some time up front working on, you know, who are you? What are your values? What's the culture in your office like? So we can talk about that when we're recruiting. But then on the back end, we work with another company, a woman named Kathleen Metcalf, who coaches agents and their new hire once that person is hired. Because what we found is, we were talking about this at lunch, I find that there's really a fourth trimester when you're hiring. There's figuring out what you need. There's the search process. There's, you know, getting them on board. And then you have to onboard and train them. And way too many people, like a lot of the problems happen when that person gets hired and the agent's like, awesome, you're here. See you later. I'm busy. And they don't really take the time to develop them and get them fully up to speed. And so they think that they can do it, or they think that they have a good plan for that, but they don't. And there's a lot of miscommunication, missed expectations, and that can make a really good placement implode. And so if you go back to like some of the challenges that we have, that's a really big one. And I think people really sell themselves short by not really following through on the process.
No, we see it all the time. And I've done it myself, but I didn't have to do it very many times before I figured out that I was the problem. Reminds me of the doctor who figured out that germs were killing people. He was killing people.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Every time he went into the hospital
in the book
room.
that we're reading right now. Yeah.
Well, and that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like hiring someone new and training them. It's like, okay, I'm probably going to be responsible for their departure. But what was my point? Here comes the medicine. What were you just talking about? I'm sorry.
That's okay. So it's one of the biggest hurdles.
Oh, right.
When they first join.
Is training that person. So
which I would, huge.
It's one thing to it's one thing to find that person and then to take them through a process, a hiring process where you can vet them and learn about them and try to figure out if they're going to be a match. And then you feel like the job's done.
Yeah.
You feel like it's over when you've made the hire and that this is cause for celebration. And really, the work's just started.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then you get them in the door, and then I feel like, it's just more work. It's more work for me now. I have to do the work. I can't just go, okay, great, plug in, play, check you later. It's a lot of maintenance and a lot of training, and it's me checking in with them, and sometimes people don't even have enough information to even know where to start.
No, yeah.
And I think agents are terrible at that. So I often say, and you can tell me if you agree, that agents are so busy trying to figure out how to be a real estate agent that they don't take any time to figure out how to be a business person, right? Because they're so focused on learning contracts and writing contracts and finding clients and you're on that hamster wheel. And when you're on that hamster wheel, you're not engaging the part of your brain that says, I need to set this up a certain way. I need to have someone helping me catch all of these files that are coming at me and making sure nothing slips through the cracks. So that when you actually do hire that person, you're just like, here, relief, great. But I would imagine that we've seen it time and time again, where new hires would wash out in the first couple of months.
Yeah, we say the lifespan of an admin is about a year in the real estate industry.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I have a better
Oh,
stat for you
please.
than
Yeah.
that.
Oh, God.
So I did a survey a couple years ago just to get a sense of what is the turnover rate. So this
Yeah.
wasn't for my clients. It was just kind of
General.
nationwide. It's about a 50% turnover rate for admins. So 50% of admins are turning over every year. And I've talked to
Wow.
business coaches and just to see, like, what do you think about that stat? And they were like, well, if it's 50%, that's better than what I see because it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And so, I mean, I think there are systemic problems throughout the whole hiring and onboarding and training and management process that lead to that. It's not, you can't point to one thing.
No.
But I think you hit it on the head. What people need to realize is you're not just a salesperson selling things. You are a business owner, and that means you have to treat your business like a business. And I know we all talk about this all the time, but, you know, like we were talking about earlier, Jesse, so many people want to hire somebody and want to pay them as an independent contractor when they really are an employee. They don't want to have an employee handbook. They don't even bother to do an offer letter. They're not running a business. They're pretending to run a business.
I know agents, when we get busy, we become like cut rate contractors where we just like start cutting all the corners. Like, and that's a big thing. Hiring someone and paying them as an independent contractor when they're not. They don't understand the ramifications of that. People don't understand what we were talking over lunch. I have a client who was paying independent contractors, and if you were to ask me, I would have said that they were independent contractors. Like, I got it. But so often what we see is agents just trying to use that as a loophole to not pay payroll tax and to not have to offer someone that level of security. And so my client that got caught or whatever by Labor and Industries was fined like $120,000. And so what they do is they figure out if it's an independent contractor or an employee, and if they should have been paid as an employee but were paid as an independent contractor, they now have to pay all that back payroll tax since that person started. So when you think about paying $120,000 fine or paying payroll tax seems a little more
All of a sudden
palatable.
sounds okay. Yeah.
And it prevents you from being sort of held captive by an employee. Because when you hire someone, you think everything's great. We're all going to be friends forever. This is all going to be wonderful. It doesn't always end up that way. I mean, let's be real. And if you're afraid to fire somebody because you're afraid they're going to turn you in because you both know that you should have been classifying them differently, you are in a bad spot. And let me tell you, if you pay someone as an independent contractor and then you switch them over to an employee, the IRS sees that as a red flag, and it's likely that you'll be investigated. So I've had people say, well, I want to pay them as an independent contractor for the first 3 months, and then if I really like them, I want to keep them, I'll switch them over. Well, I've seen people get caught for that. So, and then, people think if they're licensed, then that automatically means they're an independent contractor, and that is not true.
Right.
It's a mess. And I think the thing that we have to remember is that 10% or 12% that you're paying in taxes, part of that goes to cover their unemployment insurance. So as an employer, you have a moral and ethical responsibility to take care of the people who are dedicating their time and their energy to helping you grow your business. If something happens and you need to lay them off, like legitimately lay them off, not fire them, you've just left them out in the cold. Is that really the kind of person you want to be, the kind of manager you want to be? I mean, I agree. I don't think people really think through all of the ramifications. Also, likely, if they're paying them as an independent contractor, they're also not paying workers' comp on them. And I've seen it happen where somebody slipped down the stairs at an open house and broke a leg. Guess who's responsible for that broken leg? You are, Mr. Employer, and you didn't have workers' comp.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's not
I feel like
it.
when agents get into real estate, their mentality is almost like they treat themselves like an employee working for the brokerage, which I just was thinking about this as you guys were talking, because it's such an interesting playing field in the real estate industry so you have a whole just boatload of entrepreneurs who have no idea how to run a business for the most part. Like I've been telling Vanessa and I've told other people that you have a lot of natural business acumen. Having not had a business prior to this, a lot of this has just come naturally to you. And I know a lot of books and things that you've put yourself around, but you have a lot of common sense where other agents seem to be missing some of the basics. Like,
Well, I think part of it is, I was thinking about this today, and I was wrestling with whether I should say something like this, but
sounds like yes.
who knows? I think I often say it takes a lot of ego to be self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a whole nother level of arrogance to be a real estate agent, is what I say.
Yeah.
Now, but here's what I have a further thought on that. And I think being a real estate agent is cheating on an entrepreneurial level. Like,
what do you mean?
It's cheating on the entrepreneur test because it's not doing even
what any other
Vanessa
entrepreneur
did.
will do. Sure. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
figuring out a model
Yeah.
to hire people and train them and then collect payment from clients and then, that whole thing, like you're creating something.
Yeah.
I get that. Real estate is
You're kind of stepping into
it's
something.
the lowest common denominator of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing anything major like that.
Mm-hmm.
All you're doing is selling yourself, right, with a gold name badge
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to sell homes.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't turn it into a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a highly marketable and easy to implement business system.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an easy bake oven of entrepreneurs, honestly.
Well, and you're stepping into a brokerage where they have rules and things you have to live by, and you're instructed to use certain signage.
And it's more of social hour than it is like business time, right?
Yeah.
And so I understand that. Like, I don't deceive myself.
Yeah.
I don't deceive myself that I've done some great, amazing thing
Yeah. And
that hasn't ever been done.
I mean, we get comments all the time that because we run ourselves like a business, it's one of the things that can sometimes be a turnoff to people because they're like, oh,
Right.
we're so serious, we're so,
Yes.
which I take as a compliment. Like,
I do too.
It's good.
But yeah, I would say then I have to remind you and other people from time to time, listen, I haven't done this before. This is my first rodeo
Yeah.
when it comes to being a business owner.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make mistakes.
And being an employer and all
But
that.
I think I had the benefit of knowing there are people smarter than me out there, and I would listen to them. I'd ask them questions, and then you get to realize that with now I have Stan Lee in my head telling with great power comes great responsibility. But when you do have a big business and you have employees and you have payroll, you have liability.
Yeah.
And when you have liability, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So really what I think a lot of my business decisions are made from a place of needing protection, realizing that if I want to have a big business, I have to do it a certain way. And so some people cheat and they try to cut corners by paying employees as independent contractors. In other situations, they micromanage their employees to death, thinking that their way is the only way to go. Like, there's just all these different layers when it comes to running a business that it takes time and a lot of education to actually make it a business. And so anyway, my point is I think being a real estate agent, it's easy to cheat. It's easy to not do the hard work. It's easy to not build the business aspect of it, to not have procedure manuals or to have any sort of template for how we want to operate. And so it's hard to break agents out of that model.
Yeah.
Well, somebody told me recently, most people own a job, only some people own a business. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Because you can own it, your name's on the door, and you still just have a job.
Yep.
Or you can decide to actually run a business. And what I love about the recruiting process is we get to help people create leverage in their business so that they actually can run a business, right? I mean, the point is that you have people who do stuff for you, and you can check out for the afternoon or like a week if you want to, right? Yeah. And so many people just stick on the hamster wheel and feel like they have to do everything. And they put themselves in this perpetual, this cycle where they continue just to own a job. What's the point of that? Why would you want to do that to yourself? It is so much better to leverage yourself out and have the freedom and flexibility to, discover new things, go on vacation, build something, and not just feel like you have to show up 9 to 5 and churn it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we have to show. Like, I've realized that's what I have to show people. So many people haven't done anything. They haven't ventured outside of their corridor, and they do it because they need a job and they need to pay bills. But then when you start to utilize money, as a tool for life, as like an exploratory device, like going out, man, when I travel, the next thing I want to do is book my next trip.
Yeah.
And then that emboldens me to set some goals, some real goals that I'm like, okay, I need to do these things. I need to make this much money in order to do this thing that I want to do.
And that's the really fun thing about owning a business, right? And even Margaret's able to do that within her role because she works for somebody who encourages that mentality. But yeah, that's what's so exciting about it versus wait until the boss decides to give you a 3% raise, you know?
With Margaret, it was, we did this thing called Getting the Book, which is like part of the Keller Williams hiring process. And what it does is it really helps you identify the goals of your employee. And so and it also, you're spending about an hour and a half with that person just talking about their goals and envisioning what it would look like if they had a bigger, better life. And then I took all my handwritten notes and I entered them into this thing called Wordle.net, and it creates a word map. So it takes all of the words I put in and then it makes all the words I use the most bigger, right? And so on hers, like travel popped out big time. And so I was taught, and this was a hack right from the beginning, I was taught, if you give people what they want, they'll never leave you, right? And if you pay them enough money and they get to satisfy other goals outside of that, they'll never leave you. And so for travel, when that came up with Margaret, I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm going to utilize travel as part of how I manage Margaret. Manage. You are kind of a wild Mustang, like that poncho that you're wearing.
I know. I give you as much trouble as I do Grace.
No, but so then I made sure she went to all the Keller Williams events to training. And then we developed a class so that she could travel outside of this area and we'd still make money. And it's been brilliant. It's been awesome.
Well, I think you're selling yourself short just a little bit because, yes, money is important, but the reality is people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. And you've created an environment where you have somebody who wants to stay with you, and she might be offered more money someplace else, but it's not just about the money. But the money is important. Let me be clear. Like, you can't underpay your people. But every day, it's about the boss. It's really about the boss.
Yeah.
That's a interesting comment, and I like it because I tell agents all the time, people aren't looking for agents, they're looking for houses. And it's kind of a similar thought there, right? Where people aren't leaving their job, they're leaving their boss. I get that. That makes sense.
Well, yeah, you're directly responsible for yes, I have a lot of autonomy but that was all built around what you needed in the business and how you operate. And I think part of the plus side for me, or the advantage that I have over some admin, is that I've worked enough other places prior to this job that I know what it looks like out there. And I think a lot of people don't know, which can be really hard because sometimes some admin in the real estate industry that I've talked to and outside get into really horribly abusive situations, verbal, mental, all of it, and they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know that it's not healthy. It's super sad. Sometimes just enlightening people to the fact that that's not actually, no, they shouldn't talk to you like that, or, yeah, you've actually got it really good. And so I think I've been blessed enough to have worked enough places where I saw the opportunity, I saw the freedom, I saw the autonomy, and I understood that even though you made mistakes, I made mistakes, we were able to work at it where most people would stop and kind of give up. We've been able to work through things, knowing that our faults are just our faults. You are not, ultimately as angry in one moment as you were, it's just temporary, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's a little bit like dating, right? I hate that, but it's true. You kind of have to date a few people to understand. But
so far, you've related this to pregnancy
I know.
and dating.
And dating, yeah.
Sorry, I need better analogies. I'm really trying.
The fourth trimester, and now we're getting divorced. We're going dating again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they say career visioning is like the honeymoon period.
Yeah. But I do think I see young people. I think we've all had a terrible boss. It usually happens when you're young before you know better, and then you promise you're never going to work with someone like that again.
Yeah.
So I see that when I talk to an agent and they've consistently hired really young people and they've had a lot of turnover, it's usually a sign that they're kind of awful to work for. And anybody over 30 wouldn't put up with them for a minute.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. We know quite a few agents that have steady turnover for that reason.
Yeah.
And, I can't imagine. I was wondering, if I was running a staffing company, I understand having an impact on your recruits, but changing the mindset of a client has to be a hurdle.
Well, I think some people shouldn't be managers. I mean, it's really that simple. I thought for a long time, I really wanted to change people and make sure take somebody who's a terrible manager and make them a good manager. It's not. I can't do that. They need to go to therapy. It's beyond my scope of skill. Yeah. But look, there are people who are difficult human beings who can hire and keep really great employees. They have to pay more and they have to learn some boundaries sometimes, but it's not impossible for someone who's difficult. But when somebody is dishonest, when they're abusive, there's a line between being difficult and being abusive. Yeah. And look, most top agents are difficult. They are.
Yeah. I'm difficult. I'll be honest. Yeah, I'm difficult.
Look, most successful people are difficult. They can be demanding. They have high energy. They have all these ideas. You're trying to kind of get them to go in the direction they're supposed to go, and they're going all over the place. So that's okay. It's okay to be difficult. It's not okay to be abusive or disrespectful or dishonest. And that's where it's just you can't help those people.
No.
Don't manage people. If you if you fall into that category, just work for yourself.
Yeah, I think I was lucky. I was fortunate because Margaret, I knew where Margaret had just come from. She had worked for I had interviewed her, and then she got a job offer after the first interview and asked if I could match it, and I couldn't match it, so I released her. Be blessed. And she worked there 6 weeks, and then after that was asked if we could resume the process again because she had quit her job. And so she went over. I was that was a surprise to me, right?
Because on my resume it doesn't show that. I stick 3 to 4 years in most places. Yeah.
Right. So now I have to determine, is this person
crazy?
Yeah. Is she is she impulsive? Is she just doing this? And she needed me to decide right then. I couldn't find. And then it only lasts 6 weeks. But what I learned is when you explained what the environment was like, I couldn't work there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then it really impressed upon me. I was very aware that I had to create an environment that you felt safe in. I was very aware, based on the experience that you had had prior to joining me, that your environment was
I didn't think about that before.
Was very important to you.
So did you make some specific changes then before I started?
I think if I can relate it to breaking colts, when you break
making fun of my analogy.
Right?
Here's my point. You can, people talk about it all the time in dating and love and everything. You can't hold something too tight, right?
Sure.
Or you'll lose it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that with you, where I knew that if I tried to white knuckle this, it wouldn't work. And so realizing, and I've realized that about talented people in general. If they're talented, they really don't need much other than point in a direction and let them figure out how to get there. And so, and they're the best people to work with because they require the least amount of supervision. They require the least amount of coddling. And literally all they're looking for is a direction. Give me a direction and let me make my path.
I heard this quote recently that you guys will love. You can't do epic shit with basic people. I love that. I told when we're going to have our next retreat for our team, I'm we're putting that on T-shirts. I love that. And it's so true. And it's very easy to be a great manager when you're managing really great people. It just, it makes your life so much easier. So this process and getting it right is so important. It's just the fundamental thing. You spend more on your staff than you do on almost anything else.
I think it's more important than any other process you do in your business if you plan on hiring people.
Yeah.
Well, every business is a bunch of sequential steps forward, right? I often talk about, my biggest thing that I'm teaching my kids and that I talk about is when I come home, did I move the ball forward today? And I don't know. Sometimes I get hit by avalanches and snowballs that push me back. But did I move it forward? Did I do something to move the business forward today? And I just tend to focus on that, and that's what I look for in my employees as well. And so, if you know a business is just 1,000 steps, sequential steps, you just have to make them. And so when what I realized in our business is that and this has been said to me, but I don't think it meant what it meant until recently. One of my coaches taught me that you build the team and the team builds the business. And what we've had to do over the past couple of years that I'm getting clarity on is we had to rebuild the team. And so it's taken a lot of energy and effort and time to get the right team members in place. And now I have this sense of like elation and lightness because now I know that the team that we have, everybody's pushing the ball forward.
Yeah, everybody's a business
in the right
builder.
direction,
Yeah.
in the same direction,
Yeah.
right? Like before, it was just killing our tent. We had tent spikes in different places and poles in different places, and now finally we have a unified vision. And so I think in business, it's not always about business moves. Sometimes it's just hiring moves, hiring the right people first and foremost.
I was telling Vanessa the other night, like, there's been times when I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. So I know, like, I've learned a lot about recruiting, and I always knew I was a natural people person and connector and all of that. But recruiting is like a whole nother level. That's why when I think about what you do on a daily basis and what your goals are for your business, it's a little bit daunting to me because I will pass along resumes, but very rarely. I always tell the person of the resume that if I find an employer that I think is a good person and has a solid business, then I will give them your resume. Otherwise, it's not leaving my desk. And it's just so rare that you run across someone in real estate that I would actually refer someone to as far as a team or an owner. So to think about trying to place people like in the dating world, I'm kind of like, God, like...
There's a lot of pieces, and some of it is really just like a gut. So you have an initial conversation with an agent, and you listen to how fast or how slow they talk. I mean, this is so much like what you do with your clients, right? Yeah. And you listen to the words that they use and how they describe things and their energy level. And then when you're talking to candidates, you're trying to match that, right? And you're also listening to their values. So what's important to them. And the better they are at articulating their values, the easier. Actually, I have a great story about this. This is one of my favorite stories. So I had this client in Canada, and she's sort of like rough and tumble, and she's yelling at her staff while she's talking to me. And she's sort of like, I could just picture this like big, boisterous, spiky-haired lady. I don't know what she really looked like, but she goes, we're really politically incorrect around here. We really just tell it as it is, and people have to deal with that. And by the way, if they can't quote Seinfeld, they can't work here. And I was like, oh, that's funny. No, she's like, no, I am serious. If they can't quote Seinfeld, they can't work here. And I was like, well, that's new. I haven't had that before, but okay, fine. So it was a politically incorrect, rough and tumble Seinfeld quoting office. Great. You guys know exactly who you are. So I put in the job ad, I put 2 Seinfeld quotes at the top, and I said, if you don't know who said this isn't the job for you. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. I don't know. People flipped out. I got the most incredible cover letters from people who were like, I love to work in a politically incorrect office. I can quote every Seinfeld episode. People were freaking excited about that job. So the point is, it doesn't have to be altruistic. You just have to have a thing. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Just tell me what your thing is, and I can help you find those people. But people want to find their tribe.
Yeah, we're very tribal. Like, it's weird. It's so weird to me that as we become more technologically advanced, we become more tribal, And yeah, everyone now, it's so funny. And it goes back to the long tail. I don't want to explain that right now, but essentially, we live in a day and time where you can find your tribe no matter what your interest is.
Yeah.
Like, it can be such an obscure interest. And with the internet, you could have all of these peer group around the world that are into the same thing that you're into.
Yeah.
And I understand why that's such a huge piece in hiring some. Like, we actually we decided early on, if you can't hang with us after hours, then you can't work with us. Like, we want to enjoy you as a person. And that means that you have to be able to hang out with us. And we had someone who we had this talk with them. And then we're like, hey, and there's travel. Like, there's some travel. There's not a lot. And we tried to do a one-day retreat. Where he was going to go to a town that was 2 hours away for one overnight. And he quit. Because it was like, he said, I'm not traveling. And I was thinking, well, you're not going to have to travel. Like, I'm not sending you to China once a week, or I'm not sending you to Austin once a week or once a month. It's like, we're doing an overnight retreat to get focused on our business. And he's like, I won't travel. I'm like, okay, noted. Wow. And now, since then, we've been very clear. Like, if we can't hang out with you, then, and you don't want to get to know us and care about us. Well,
because part of our mission statement and vision statement is doing life together. So, and that doesn't mean with any one particular type of person. We've hired all sorts of different types of people with all different types of backgrounds from every walk of life, which I love. But there's a general like feeling amongst all of us based on love, compassion, gratitude, grace, all of those things. And so I think what you said earlier is we have such clarity on how we operate as a business and how we operate as people and humans that it helps people find us. Yeah.
And it's funny because we see it and no one else gets it. Like
if
you pulled in the office,
well, no.
right? Other agents, they wouldn't understand what the appeal is.
Well, that's part of the reason why they're not on the team. Yeah.
Everyone has their own tribe.
Everybody has their own thing. Yeah.
They all have their own thing. You said something earlier that I wanted to talk about. You talked about how she had, left a job and you weren't sure, if whether or not that was going to work. And what I found, like the best thing you can do when you're interviewing somebody is don't judge how jumpy they are in their resume. Just start at the bottom and you ask 4 questions. Why were you attracted to that job? What were you hired to do? What did you accomplish? And why did you decide to leave? Because there's a difference between what were you hired to do and what did you accomplish. Yeah. Those are really interesting. Because what I've heard from people over and over is stuff like, I was hired to be the executive assistant and to manage the calendar. What did you accomplish? I did all the marketing and the social media. Okay, next job. I was hired to be the transaction coordinator. What did you accomplish? I did all of their social media, right? So why aren't you applying to marketing jobs? Like they don't see their own patterns. Like you really get to see the patterns, but then also listening for challenge versus victim speak, so which is what what I was alluding to.
I totally note that too when I'm interviewing people because it's a victim mentality that absolutely comes out in their speech.
Absolutely. Totally. And people are going to have bad jobs. Like there are going to be times when things don't work out, but usually talented people are pulled forward. Job over job. If you listen to somebody talented talk, it's, my boss moved to this other company and they took me with them. Yeah. Or a recruiter reached out to me, or I saw this opportunity and I pursued it. It's not, I wasn't paid or they laid me off and then I was laid off. And, you have to look for the pattern. Things happen, but there are definitely patterns in the way people speak. And I think it's fascinating. Like if you're getting bored in an interview, start looking for the patterns because that's where the fun stuff is, I think. And the rabbit holes. Just keep asking why, what, how, when. Tell me more about that. Because the surface answer is never the answer. Yeah. But that's the other challenge with agents. You guys talk too much.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, man.
Oh, I know. And I'm actually, I'm pretty good about it. But I know exactly what you mean. Agents drive me nuts, like how much they talk. And then if you are, and it's antithetical to the support position. It's antithetical to that EA role is because they usually like their space and their quiet time and their...
Well, and I don't know how many admin I've coached recently who have said, I'm trying to have a conversation with whoever it is, whoever their boss is, and they can't get a word in. Or they get a word in, but then the person speaks over them and continues to tell their story about something not even about the conversation. So part of I think a lot of what I talk to people about is just how to push their perspective or their issue to the forefront, which is why Fierce Conversations always comes up, because if they write it down, then it looks more official. And if they hand it to them, it's like, oh God, what's this? Is it a letter of resignation? Is it a...
Well, and agents make the mistake of hiring people they like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they end up hiring another high I.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another talker.
Yep. So they can just hang out in the office.
So they can hang out at the water cooler, at the coffee pot, and then at the bathroom, and then and then at lunch, which goes 45 minutes too long because they're having such a great time, and then nothing gets done. My first hire was a high I, and we figured it out real quick because I'm trying to explain to her that I just saw her at 5:45 last night. Nothing happened in her life that warrants a 20-minute update at 9 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So one of the ways we solve this, because I'd have candidates come back after an interview and they'd say, well, I think it went okay. They didn't really ask me many questions. And then the agent would say, I don't know, I really didn't get a good feel for them. And I was like, you guys sat together for an hour.
Yeah.
What was going on? So we video interview our interviews
Oh my
with candidates.
gosh, yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, because I realized they need to see, these are the questions you need to ask and these are the answers. So just watch this. I don't think they usually watch the whole thing, but whatever, at least we get it all on camera.
Yeah.
We do this for 2 reasons, though, and this is why it's so important to interview people multiple times, and that's one of the reasons clear visioning is so great. People show up differently on different days sometimes.
Yeah, so
and
true.
you interview enough people, right?
Yeah.
And the person I saw on camera, the person, I had a conversation with isn't the same person
Yeah.
who shows up at the office. So the video is great because we're both in agreement, like, this is who we saw.
Yeah.
Now, the downside with video is some people get tense or they, honestly, the lighting of the camera, that you don't always look your best on camera. So there are downsides to it. But honestly, getting agents to actually listen to these are the questions you should ask and these are the answers you need answers to before they meet in person is necessary.
No, I think I've been on a roll for a couple years to want to videotape our agents doing consults. Because so much of what they do, and the reason Jillian Farrar was one of our first buyer's agents that we ever had, she was fantastic. And I think a large part of that was because of her theater background. She knew how to handle herself, what she looked like when she was talking, how to be expressive, when to stop talking. Because even though she's a talker, she's very aware of when to listen.
She's a very active listener.
So amazing. So I think if there's anything else that an agent can do to improve themselves in their business, whether they're a single agent or a team member, it would be to videotape yourself and then take some speech lessons, like speaking and listening.
Yes.
And then buy a poncho.
And buy a poncho because ponchos make everything better.
Ponchos are awesome.
Thank
Come
you,
on.
Vanessa.
So when I was at school, when I was at USC, the grad students had to interview as part of their management course, the undergrads, and it was videotaped, and it was for both of us. So we got to do that. They got to learn how they interviewed, and they were critiqued on it, and we got to see what it was like when we were being interviewed. So you caught all of the ums and the likes and the knows, right? And the floppy wrists or how much you used your hands. And honestly, that was one of the best exercises. And I highly recommend.
I remember you
videotaping
just
yourself.
recently started putting yourself on video, and you said your coach just said, just do it. And
Yes.
you've recognized how much better you've gotten over the last year.
That was a really painful bridge to cross, but it's been really good. And I think, it's interesting to see how you improve over time. Definitely you should watch yourself on video, even though it's painful. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I could do that. I could use that probably. We've had a few sessions where I've been rebuked for looking at my phone or appearing disinterested or impatient, and I was probably all of those things.
Well, it's hard. I think as talented as so many agents, they're so naturally talented, but taking a look at themselves and realizing how many of them have
Don't make them look into
low
the
self-esteem.
abyss. No.
Yeah, it's a real issue. And so part of my job, I feel like, as on the admin side, is it's so funny. But I was telling Vanessa last night, a couple years ago when I started pushing agents to really show up on social media with me, they just would not do it. And I'm not going to force anyone to do it, but I knew that was something we needed as a company, was really to have a presence. So I started putting myself on there. And now I get the benefit and the opportunities that come with that. I know I've gotten much better speaking in front of people because I just shoved myself out there. So I think leading with action like that has kind of been my goal, which is why I'm so, Jessica Townsell, our buyer's agent, is not afraid of being in front of the camera. She may not love it, but she's willing to put herself out there, which for me is another sign of someone who's willing to go after it no matter what.
Well,
I love that about her.
Everyone needs to get used to being on video. That's just the way it goes.
The way the world's
now.
going.
You can't write blog articles and expect anyone to read them. You have to be on video. And, even we've started using BombBomb. I think that's what it's called, BombBomb, right? Yeah. I'm not the one who has to do it, thank God. But when we're contacting candidates to say, hey, we're excited to interview you, tomorrow, don't forget, blah, blah, blah. We just do it all on video now because you have to stand out and people will watch a video where they won't read a long email. So get over it. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
So,
What are some, do you have common frustrations from clients, or do you have exceptional stories of clients doing irrational things? What do you run into with running a staffing agency?
I thought I had really good stories until I talked to an HR consultant, and then she blew my stories out of the water. I don't know. Should we tell the crazy sexual harassment story? I don't know. Should we? Are we gonna get to see?
Yes.
This one blew my mind. I'll never forget. So it was a day off. I'm sitting by the pool. I have a drink in my hand. I get a call. I see it's a client. Pick it up. He goes, I don't know. I don't think this assistant's going to work out. Okay, so what's happening? Well, I want to take her to this conference. And so let me back up. He's 35. His wife is pregnant. She's 23. This is LA. I want to take her to this conference, and I'm going to pay for her ticket. She gets to go to this event. I'm going to pay for her flight, but I'm not going to pay for 2 hotel rooms. And I was like, wait, what? Come again? He's like, yeah, like, why would I pay for 2 hotel rooms? And I said, because you what? He goes, well, there'll be 2 beds. I don't see what the problem is. And I actually had to explain to him why it's not appropriate for him to insist that his 23-year-old assistant share a hotel room with him. And he was incredulous about it. And that story always stuck with me. It's just like, are you kidding me?
That happens a lot in real estate.
But yes, I know, like, look, I get that. But to call the recruiter and tell me that it's her fault because she won't get on, I mean, at some point you realize that your request is inappropriate.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I had another LA. LA is like this place of all the stories. This one poor guy found a file on his computer that was filled with his boss's homemade gay porn. And he was too afraid to tell the boss that it was there. So for 6 months, he worked on that computer with this little file on the desktop, and he knew what was in it. And he finally had enough, and he quit, and he told me about it, and the agent wanted a new assistant. So I had to say, like, hey, by the way, you should know. And he's like, we're all adults. I don't see what the problem is. And I was like,
no one wants to see you in that state.
No one wants to see. I was just like, I don't know, people, come on.
Wow.
You use the work computer. Keep it clean.
Yeah,
So,
ask Anthony Weiner. Ask a bunch of people if it's actually appropriate that are in jail.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. Most agents are wonderful. I mean, they mean well. They're trying. We have a lot of really fantastic clients. But I think, again, not all people should be managers. And if you're going to be a manager, like you said, it's a responsibility. You have other people who are counting on you to make sure that they can pay their rent, that they can eat, they can support their families. It is a responsibility, and it's not just about you. Actually, it's not at all about you. It's all about the people you hire. You really have to let go of your ego in so many ways, and I've certainly grown as a leader as well. I have a team of, 5 now. I've had more people in the past, and you really have to let go of your ego when you're a manager and, think about them first and accept feedback. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but it's not about you anymore.
Yeah, it's I think I've probably learned the most from running a business with employees and learning how to lead people and being a parent. It's the same ball of wax for me. Because when my kids, like, if someone here on my team screws up, my initial reaction is just like if my kid screwed up. Like I've had to temper that because I was raised in an environment where there's a lot of high voices, a lot of yelling and a lot of correction. and I learned that. And so I've had to, my focus on personal development has come from necessity, not out of any desire. But I'm just trying to assimilate with the real world. That's really all that's happening. And then thankfully, I think they've both helped me in each field. By being a better parent, I learned better how to manage my team, and by managing my team well, I learned the benefits of autonomy, giving my kids autonomy. And that was interesting. Did you hear that? I am on Reddit too much because then I just say things without any reference points. But did you hear about the woman who raised a doctor, a lawyer, and a successful musician? And they did a study, and they found this woman who had 3 kids that were really high performers in their field, respectively. And they asked her basically they studied her and her parenting style and what she did differently. And she basically gave them autonomy at a young age. Wow. Like lots of freedoms. And the more freedoms they had, the better they did in life. So instead of being the helicopter mom who is over their kid and
which is what so many parents do today. Yeah.
There's no self-discovery.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've really embraced as a management style is letting people make mistakes, letting people learn on their own.
Yeah, my thing with mistakes is just tell me. I just need to know. If something happens, just tell me and we'll figure it out. The worst thing is to try to fix it without telling me.
Yeah.
Let me find out later. But honestly, it's okay. I mean, look, it's not brain surgery. Nobody's dying.
Yeah.
It might cost a little money. It might piss somebody. Sorry, I keep swearing today. Too much of this whiskey. It might tick somebody off, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's just get past it. And reality is, as a manager, the successes are owned by everybody, but the failures are really on you.
Yep.
And that's, again, you have to let go of it.
Well, I think and I used to be like, nobody, especially people that are in admin roles, tend to have personalities where I hate to make mistakes, because I know that for me to earn the trust of someone, it's like a building block. Every time I follow through, every time I execute above and beyond, every time I take initiative, you're building all these blocks of trust. And so when you blow that and you have a mistake, I feel like I've lost 5 blocks, not just one.
Well, we had something
5.
happen recently we can talk about, I think.
Oh, which one? I mean, there's mistakes all the time.
Well, there's... Which one? No. This one, I would hope...
I remember significant ones that I've made.
You don't remember a recent significant mistake we both made?
We both made? The one I remember most that I always talk about is the hotel one, when I booked the wrong hotels.
So just recently, I asked Margaret, we signed up for this lead service.
Oh, yes, this is a good story.
And it's my fault because I'm the
It's
boss.
a mutual mistake.
And I wasn't paying attention, and they told me the how they're compensated.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is he organized, he researched a program or a system that normally I would have, but he took it upon himself because we're like looking at how to get through all of our leads that we have.
So we have more leads than we can handle, and I didn't want these leads to go to waste. So I misunderstood how they get paid, and so I asked Margaret to upload these leads, and she uploaded 2,000 of them.
2,200, yeah.
And what I thought, if they would call through this list, and then when they patched a live buyer through, that it would be $3 per phone call back to us.
Okay.
And it wasn't. It was $3 per lead uploaded. Like the initial cost is $3 a lead.
So we got like $7,000. So we're sitting there like,
so we paid, $7,000 on something I thought was going to be like between $1,500 and $2,000 overall, right? And would only be paid when we
got a lead.
And so in the moment, I'm angry,
Yeah.
and I want to kick puppies. But and then I go, okay, well, that's happened. We mitigated it to the best of our ability. We got it down to about 4,000, and then I'm like, okay, we better make the most of this. Like instead of throwing a fit and throwing things,
because it's out of our control,
which I've done in the past. I'm like, okay, how do we make the most of this? How do we make sure we make money?
Yeah, make money off of it.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a really good point. Like, no assistant comes to work and goes, I really hope I mess
Can't wait
things
to make a
up.
mistake.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there's no point in
I can't wait to have a marginal day.
Yeah, exactly, right? And look, if somebody is like that, they should not be
Probably
in your
not the
business,
right person,
right? You have
yeah.
the wrong person. But there's no point in throwing salt in the wound, It's like, it happened. They already feel bad about it. Like, don't.
Well, the thing that I've
kick 'em while
realized
they're
too
down.
is that if 3 heads are better than 1. So it's probably going to make a lot more sense to talk to Jesse about it, because he's probably going to have a solution that I didn't think of, because our brains work so differently. We're like 2 different halves of a brain, that now it's actually encouraged me, after we got through those first couple years of like figuring that out. Now that I come to him with things that I normally wouldn't come to a boss about, because I know that for my personal life, my personal finances, things that happen with my duplex, I know that he's going to have possible solutions. And so when you change that mindset, then all of a sudden it becomes way more collaborative, and you realize you want people with different perspectives at the table. You don't want people that are all yes man. Like, as much as I frustrate the hell out of him sometimes, he knows that it's coming from a place where I want to add a perspective that he wouldn't have thought of, because ultimately it will make us better.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Nothing makes me more mad than a yes, and then later I find out that no, they didn't really feel like that was the best
hate
idea.
that.
That is
Yes.
the worst.
Yeah.
Like, what am I paying you for?
Yeah.
I expect you to have an opinion.
Yeah, I didn't
need you to
realize
have an
how
opinion.
detrimental that was, because I'm definitely a people pleaser and I like people to be happy. But I've never been one to totally, not say my opinion, but it's actually made me more vocal, because I've now worked around enough people who are that way, who are so meek that they won't say anything. It frustrates me when they don't tell me the truth. So now I can't not do it.
And we know stories of they're not only not talking to their bosses, they're struggling talking to you about talking to their bosses.
Yes, it's amazing.
Oh, the mythology we create between our ears
stories,
is crazy.
So it takes me back to what you said earlier about, Vanessa, about saying that so much of what you do actually is around personal development. Because when I think about my retreat that I put on and the classes that I teach, One of the things I tell the agents when they ask me, why should I send my admin? I say, well, your business will only improve to the extent that your people do. And so much of my retreat, like 85% of it, is personal development focused, that a lot of people are like, why should we come there for 3 days to work on ourselves? And I say, well, you're going to have to trust me on this one, because the more I worked on myself, the more this is what's happened. Yeah. So like using my trajectory as an example, even though it's just one, has been huge, because I don't think people still don't understand that taking their admin away from their desk and actually working on them personally, you'll get someone back to you that's way more empowered to make decisions in your business that you don't want to be making anymore. Jesse doesn't want to know when bills are paid unless it's like an extraordinarily high bill or something. He doesn't want to know about all the little things that I do every day that, aren't technically on my job description, but I get done because I need to be done. It's just amazing to people that people don't make that connection still.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, understanding Margaret's goals. I think having that goal conversation is so important.
It is.
I mean,
really
it's
is.
really such a valuable bridge builder too, because if you understand, first of all, do your goals aligned? It just, I've had people get to the end of the interview process and say, oh yeah, I just took the GMAT and I'm going to go back to grad school next year, full time on the East Coast. And this is LA. And you're like, wait, what? So your goals definitely do not align with this job. Like, we're looking for a long-term employee. So, I mean, on big things like that, but also just little things like you want to run a marathon, or you're trying to save money to buy a house. Like whatever that person's goals are, how can you help them achieve those while they're helping you achieve your goals? That is the start of a really powerful relationship. And then honoring whatever commitments you make, right, is the other really important piece. But you get longevity. You get somebody who's really excited and invested.
Well, most places of employment don't ask their employees what their goals are. Yeah. Right? Just by asking, you're changing everything for that person. Yeah. Like you're changing the entire environment that person works in. And we've seen it recently on our team. Jessica came from another team where, it wasn't run the same way. And they're a successful team. And when she came here, we asked her what her goals were. And it was like, and she was the same Jessica 6 months before. Yeah. And she sold like 1 or 2 houses with that other team. And then with our team, she's on fire. Yeah. She's like, she's selling that many a week, Wow. And it's just so powerful for me to see. And she talks about it all the time, how she doesn't have a thought about leaving at all, because she loves the people she works with, and she's meeting her goals and exceeding them.
She got so excited the first time she heard it was like time for her 411, which is after the cash talk, which is after she gets through the first 100 days. You set your goals for weekly, monthly, and annually. She was like, and I know Jesse has a hard time having any kind of an appointment in his calendar, which Vanessa can relate to.
Yes,
but
I'm with you.
When Jessica came to his door with such excitement, and you can't deny, she just loves spending any moment with you, because you give her ideas and just having you like acknowledge what our goals are. You don't have to necessarily even help us get there, because we're such great self-managers necessarily. But
I think I do it first. But like with you, I don't even have to goal set with you, right? Because you're doing it naturally now. But once, I think there's a natural evolution to it. But most people don't set goals.
No, they don't know how.
Most people that set goals don't write them down. Yeah. And so there's this like hierarchy of achievers when it comes to goal setting. And so if you set that tone right from the beginning, I just think I think it means you're creating royalty in the business instead of just like a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, a cog in a wheel.
There's probably a song that goes along with that.
Probably.
I won't sing it. Did you guys try your scotch? The ice is pretty much melted.
I've been sniffing it. I don't know that
it's not the same as our whiskey.
It smells like Tide Pods.
Like Tide Pods. Oh, God. Ugh.
Yum. Thanks for your hospitality, you guys.
And it tastes like vinegar orange juice.
Oh, jeez. So if somebody is looking for help with hiring, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is Pro REA staffing.com. And if you're just looking for info, go to YouTube, Pro REA staffing.com. There's a ton of content on how to hire, how to interview, how to grow your team. And yeah, we'd love to help.
Cool.
And again, just to be clear, you live in a foreign country, but you staff for all of the United States and Canada.
Yes. And I have a team of recruiters who are all based in the U.S. People get nervous about me being out of the country, so I always feel like I have to promise them there are people here in the States, but it doesn't really matter where we are.
Right?
It doesn't matter at all. But yeah, we have a whole team. Everybody on my team, one of my requirements is that they've all sold real estate or worked as an assistant. So everyone on my team comes from real estate because it's easier to teach recruiting than it is to teach what it's like in these offices.
Oh, right.
You know,
Yeah.
actually, I do have less actual real estate experience than anyone else on my team. But I kind of got into it from the business coaching side. So
Yeah.
I learned it.
And then how many people did you place last year, just for reference?
84 last year. So I know I have over 1,000 successful placements in my career. Yeah.
And do you have to train, do you train at different MLSs? What's the level of training that you're getting into?
So I don't do the training. Kathleen Metcalf does the training. Okay. And it's, no, we're not doing the software training. So it's really the processes, systems, terminology, communication, marketing, a lot about communication. I mean, that's really one of the biggest things on both sides. So, I mean, just really simple things like at the end of the day, send your boss an update. This is what right?
The basics.
Right, close the loop.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I finally stopped.
That's so important to me.
It's so important as a business owner. I just need to know.
Yep.
Just let me know what is happening, because when you don't know, then you make up stories about what is or not is not happening, right?
That's true in so many things in life and in business. We say in one of my quotes about culture and establishing a culture on a team is that in the absence of an established culture, the culture will emerge, whether you like it or not. If you're not going to have a say in what the culture is, it'll be said for you. So it'll be created for you.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that accidental culture thing can really get out of control.
And it's usually toxic.
Well, and
it
really,
turns toxic.
It does, and really the fish rots from the head, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't know what your values are, if you don't live your values, if you're not working on your own personal development and living whatever it is you believe in, that is noticed. And you attract people who have lower standards, and then you're not worried about when they do things that poison the well. I mean, it starts at the top.
Yep, it all boils back down to me.
How the pressure.
Fine, I'll keep doing personal development.
Yeah. But it's so much fun when you get the right people together, right? Like, you know what that's like when it all clicks, when it all finally clicks, right? It all finally clicks, and you thank you. And you have the right people in the right seats, that flow. Like, it's sort of it feels like a wave, right? There's going to be ups and downs, but you're still riding the wave. And but when, you get the wrong person, or you put the wrong person in the wrong seat, it just throws it out of whack.
Yeah, like here in Washington, crew is a thing, with a big long boat with 5 to 10 people in it. And if you have one person in there off a beat, it ruins the whole thing, right? And that's what I keep reminding myself. Like, we're just leveling up with each team member. And then once we are all on the same level, then we get to go. And that's something you said, and we've said several times today, and I've said it before, but in 2 books, Good to Great by Jim Collins, and then Energy Bus. They both say that when you have the right people, when you have the right who, the what can change, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been worried about real estate for a while, and it might not be here in the future. Like 5 years from now, who knows? All I'm saying is we might be the travel agents of 1999, you know? And if things change, I'm not going to go get a job. You know, I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do. And I already have the people I want to do it with. So we just have to shift.
I love that. That is so true. And I feel the same way about my team. I could take these people and point in a different direction in a heartbeat, and we would be as successful or more successful. And so that's the power. And again, like that power of leverage, like that, I think some people don't really get what they can take off their plate and what kind of freedom that gives them. And I mean, who really gets into business for themselves to work all the time and to be chained to a desk?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, and we talk to agents like that. I mean, I have agents who love working 80-hour weeks, and this is their entire universe is work. And I'm sorry, like there is more to life than selling homes or recruiting or whatever. I mean, for my business, the reason I built it is because I wanted to be a mom, a present mom, and I wanted to be able to travel, and I wanted to have a real career, and I want everyone on my team to be able to achieve all of the goals in their life, just like you guys, like doing life together. It's not just about working all the time. But if you don't think about your business as this tool for achieving everything else in your life, and you just let yourself own a job, then you're really missing the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good place to end. Don't miss the point, everybody.
Don't miss the point. Yes. Agreed.
Buy a poncho. Don't miss the point.
Buy a poncho.
It's a very cute poncho.
Thank you, Vanessa.
I feel like I have to defend it.
Yeah, right. Might have to be the picture on the cover
You
art for
defend
this
it. I have
episode.
to look at it. So. Defend away.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.